Is technology the death of tradition? Or is it maybe an opportunity that every classical musician should jump on and just try to maximize it going into a new age of classical music all around the world? Today, we are going to look at this topic that is kind of burning on everybody's heart that's a classical musician in the digital age, and they sooner or later have to face it. Let's look in this episode whether it's going to be a bridge towards the future or whether the technology is going to ruin everything that we have built up so far. Hello and welcome to the Artful Maestro podcast. I'm your host, Nenad Leonart, a harpsichordist and historical organist, fascinated by all the historical instruments. I've studied music for 10 years. At the end of my studies, I started filming myself, putting myself out there onto social media, onto YouTube. I started a video production company. I amassed over 70,000 followers across my channels. And today I train, and I coach other classical musicians to do the same. Now, if you are here, you're probably wondering what's going on with this technology stuff. How can I make it work for myself? And is it even something that I maybe should consider doing? Or am I going to kind of play it half-assed and not be one or the other and destroy everything that I've built so far? You've likely felt that push as a classical musician between tradition and innovation. Now, technology has made it a lot easier to create our work and to share our work with others. But kind of watering it down this way, does it also lose some of its value? Does things that used to make classical music timeless? Let's look at the crossroads we are at right now and discuss what we can do to improve this. Before we dive into this episode, go ahead and visit the Artful shop, which is artful.shop. It's kind of the main sponsor of this podcast. It's not really a sponsor, it's just a place where you can get merchandise like t-shirts, like mugs, like blankets. Everything is music themed and it's kind of made for musicians. So everything that you get on the Artful shop is going directly to fund this podcast, right? You can also support this podcast directly over there or get something that you like. And this is kind of really supporting me into creating all this knowledge that I share with everybody all around the world, because I want every classical musician to succeed. Because I want us to create a better future for ourselves, to create a future where classical music is listened by everyone, or almost everyone. And to do that, we need to be with each other and help each other out. So thank you for your support. Go check out Artful Shop. And when you check out, you can give in the code ARTFUL5 at the checkout for getting an additional 5% discount on your whole order. There's also a couple other things like coachings on there, and there's sample sets for Hauptwerk and for other organ programs, so you'll figure it out. Now, let's move on to the question of today, and I'd like to start out by sharing a personal story that in the end made me feel really, really, really stupid. So, here we go. When I went into my studies, I told you I was doing harpsichord, I was doing historical instruments, and kind of everybody around me, like this was back in the 2010s, like mid-2010s, nobody really had a smartphone back there. Like everybody else did. They had iPhones, they had Samsungs, whatever was around. But like the hardcore people in the university, they didn't just play the music of the Stone Age so to speak, they also used gear from the Stone Age. I remember them having like these Nokias that you still had to type with your thumbs by pressing the numeral buttons several times to get some text out of it. Really, really, really fun stuff, right? It almost felt like retro, you know? Just going in a place and everybody's dressing up differently. Yeah, they also had a very weird, peculiar dressing style. And I kind of felt a little bit like an outsider there because I was fascinated by the modern stuff, by everything that's going on. I used to have, let's say, modern clothes or just like normal clothes. I used to have like a digital calendar that was synced with my phone and my computer, so I could just like schedule my stuff. And they used to run around with this paper calendars, writing everything down, and then they lose it and they're like, oh no, I lost all my appointments, I need to do it again. It was really weird for me back then. Why you would do that if you have the technology? Well, a couple of years in, I didn't necessarily notice this, but I kind of started losing my fascination for all the modern tech and gear and features that were around. And I started thinking more and more Stone Agey, right? So what happened was that at the end of the 2010s, iPads started coming up, like the huge ones, the iPad Pro, where you could put your sheet music on and so on. And I remember buying one, I think that was in 2018, to use it for sheet music, to use it to turn pages, and I bought it and I tried it out kind of a little bit and I felt like, this is too unreliable. I preferred to have like, my papers, everything that I used to do. And then I would spend hours onto just cutting out these papers so it makes sense for me, like to turn pages and everything. And it took me a long, long while to understand how inefficient that is, how stupid it is. I sometimes the papers would get so large, I couldn't fit them in my bag. So I had to get another bag that I would hold in my arms with like these huge cardboards to protect everything, just so it didn't get wet in the rain or something like that. And then the sheet music wouldn't hold. Sometimes it would just like get these crumbles on it and everything. Awful, awful, awful experience. In the end, like now, when I have my setup, my digital setup for playing, I feel so stupid, But back then it was like all weird and modern and not reliable, So honestly, it took me really a long while before I was able to admit that that's the way to go into the future and all the advantages that it has. Now, today I still think that paper has its advantages, but I am 99.9% playing from my tablets. So that was my story with it. And the takeaway, the lesson was, guess what it was? To not always think that older traditional is better just because it has proven itself, and that sometimes trying out new tech and trying out to really go onto this way can yield so much that the benefit is just extremely large in comparison to what you have been doing before. And just because we are used to something doesn't mean that we have to continue doing it. It just means take a step back and reevaluate. Okay? That is my story around that. And now let's look at from more of a big picture side, like an objective side. Obviously today I've turned everything around. A lot of the things in my life are different. Basically everything I do is digital right now. But that has its own reasons, and it's not necessarily the place to cover in this episode. We are going to look now at objectively what is tradition, what are the modern new developments, and how they kind of are maybe a little bit at war with each other. So, classical music, fine art, traditional craftsmanship, everything that we are kind of really, really deeply connected to, building instruments, for example, right? All of those, they are rooted in centuries of mastery, of people trying out new things, taking what works, taking what has actually been the lesson, right, from so many people doing it, and then improving onto it. So you also know, like, the development of musical instruments, but also the development of music. It used to be all over the place and everything there, and then it kind of streamlined, right? And we have today standardized instruments, we have a standardized pitch, we have standardized settings for how an orchestra is supposed to look like, how an ensemble is supposed to look like, how a piano is supposed to look like, right? Back in the day with harpsichords, they had all kinds of amounts of manuals and keys, and everybody built something different for different requirements. Today, basically every piano, grand piano, is 88 keys, and that's it, right? So stuff like that. And obviously this often involves people doing a long time study, really learning the craft, and then once they have mastered what they've learned from their master, maybe improving onto it just a little bit. And contrasting to today's technological landscape is every year something new comes out. Every year there's huge developments. Every year tools are changing, the landscape is changing, how people think about these things are changing. We are really at an extremely high speed. Like, even 2 years ago, I think ChatGPT just came out and was this fun, nice tool that people could experiment with. I obviously was very interested, so I kind of dove deep into it. And, well, we had 2 years now, and I cannot imagine my life without ChatGPT anymore. It's helping me in so many different parts of my life. I've automatized so many different things in the background that are just helping me get better education, filter through information, summarize the stuff I'm doing, brainstorm ideas, copyright, check the things that I've written, give me feedback onto different criteria, and so on and so on. Like, it's crazy. It's really become my most number one assistant. And it's just 2 years in. We have no idea what's going to come up when the next thing happens, right? And that's completely crazy. We have, like, streaming services. We have social media. We have all these things that are happening on the internet that everybody with an internet access has access to. And you can just go and watch that stuff. And you can watch it for free. Sometimes you need to look at an ad or two. And sometimes you need to, like, you can do small subscriptions. But basically, you can have that all for free. So much knowledge, so much tech is just out there for the taking. And that is kind of started also to prioritize a little bit the convenience of having it around over the depth. Right? When you wanted to research something, earlier you had to go to a library or to maybe contact an expert or just really do thorough research. Today, it's just a couple Google searches, it's what comes up, and then you're kind of done with it, right? So it's much more superficial. And the good side, you get your knowledge really fast. The downside, it's not really in depth. And there can be a lot of misinformation. And there can be a lot of wrong things leading you in the wrong direction. Well, what also kind of happened is that we have this YouTube format right now that is kind of started to replace the traditional lessons. And we also have the digital performances, so more and more people are listening to digitally produced music and less going into actual concerts. So there's just like the shift happening, especially after the COVID pandemic, where people find out, hey, I can just hang at home. I don't need to actually go out to do stuff. So there has been this huge shift happening. Now, when we have that, everything is kind of really quickly accessible. Is this accessibility actually preserving the art form? Or is it kind of undermining the very essence of it? Well, we can look at how technology is actually enhancing classical traditions, okay? So there are a couple very strong positives that we didn't have decades ago or even a couple of years ago. And some of those are the global reach. Now, especially with social media, you post something, it goes viral, you've reached millions of people. You've reached millions of people. 20, 30, 40 years ago, you had to pay a lot of money to create an ad that's going to go on the air or to be printed to reach that amount of people. Today, you just need to go viral, and you can do that for free, basically. Then, you have the preservation and accessibility. Stuff like EMSLP, where you can just go ahead and get your score there, that you don't have to go to the library, that you don't have to go and try and fix the stuff around copyrighted material, right? You're actually not allowed to copy it, but then you maybe probably still do because all of us did it, right? Who can afford the actual sheet music that they're selling out there, right? And just start to digitize those and to share it on a platform where everybody can access it, or like Bach Digital, where you can just go and look at Bach's original manuscripts. How cool is that? That was preserved only for the very, 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 very few who were into academia, who were studying that kind of stuff, and you couldn't get access. And today it's just digitized, accessible to everyone. There you go. And I love that. It's kind of democratizing everything. So we all have less of gatekeeping going on, and it's more of a fair field to play. Then you have a lot of innovation in composition as well as performance. For those who know me from my Leonart music type of stuff, I experiment a lot with historical organs, but with digital samples. And with today's technology, it's unbelievable how crazy similar you can make the sound to the original instrument. Like when comparing the recording of the original instrument and of the sampled one, obviously it's the same thing. It's once you're just recording the pipes that somebody's playing, and once you're recording the performance that somebody's playing. And if you do it with the same microphones, it's going to sound the same, and so on. So maybe we're going to do an episode where we dive into that, how interesting that is. However, you have the possibility of not having to go into church, create a crazy setup with I don't know how many super expensive microphones to do in a recording now and maybe in 10 years again. You just need to do it once with every pipe of that instrument, and then you can put it into a software and play from home, and it sounds exactly like it does in that church. Behind this, there's my organ that I've been building myself for the last 4 years, just putting components together. That's also the beauty of it. You can just go ahead and make it in a do-it-yourself fashion to save money, to pick out the exact components that you want, to put the most quality into the parts that you're interested in. So now I have an instrument that I can play churches, church organs, pipe organs from all around the world historical rare instruments, and I can change the tuning with the tip of my finger. I just press a button and it goes into the mean tone temperament, or it detunes it down to, let's say, 395 hertz, which was the French tuning, or I can go to 465, which would be maybe the German Chorton. Whatever I prefer, how I want it to sound, it's awesome. And this opened for me a window to access all that music that I've never been having the opportunity to do during my studies. I always knew, when Bach played this organ, it kind of sounded like that. Or, when we were in the year of 1602, this kind of thing happened and this revolutionized the music. And I was always going like, yeah, but how did it sound? And now I actually have a historical instrument from 1602 here that is preserved and that I can, whenever I want, go on there and test it out. I can actually hear, by playing that music on the original instrument, how it used to sound like, which is so awesome, like especially for organs that are so colorful and very customizable, so to speak. Having access to these original soundscapes is just amazing. And then, what you also have, what we didn't have back then, is community building. We had very small communities. We had the people maybe that we studied with, the people that we grew up with, the people, it was small. And today, you're cross-connected with everyone across the world. So I have people in every major city of the world where if I'm traveling, I can just hit them up and say, hey, how are you doing? Want to go grab a coffee or something? Or maybe I can even crash at their place if I'm not going into a hotel or anything. And that's really, really cool. It's cool to be cross-connected, to have all these possibilities, but also that you are not really bound. If you like someone or if you want to exchange ideas, you don't have to live near each other to bounce these off of each other. You can just hop in a Zoom meeting, you can just create content wherever you are, and then also create online communities where, again, like this compounds. You have more and more and more people coming together and exchanging ideas, growing together. And I mean, this is unbelievable how cool this is. And we have that community, which is the Artful Maestro Inner Circle that I've specifically created, and that I'm amazed at what is everything happening in there. It is for classical musicians who want to grow in the digital day and age, and they're kind of just in there helping each other, going to meetings. Like we have regular meetings where we get to discuss topics, we ask questions, we look at how things are done, we look at creating new ways of solving problems. And usually, every problem that you have, right, it's just a matter of perspective. Like you, in your own skin, you cannot solve that problem because you don't have the right perspective. But somebody who's maybe a little bit more further down the line has a different perspective on your problem, and they can help you solve it very quickly. And on the other hand, you are maybe at some point much further down the line than them, and then you can go ahead and help them solve their problem. So not just do you go and get ahead with being a part of a community, you also help others, which is then again doing like the networking thing. So they start liking you, they start throwing maybe some gigs your way, or some questions or some projects, or maybe they can put you in contact with somebody else that they know, let's say from your city or from your surrounding. So I've profited with this a lot. Like social media has done crazy things for me. I couldn't imagine my life, how it would look like if I didn't have these opportunities. I got to travel to so many countries just because I got in touch with people from all over the world. And we got to know each other and we hit it off and we had a great time. And then I went there and then I met new people there and then I connected with them and they connected me with somebody else. It's amazing. It is truly, truly amazing. So wonderful, wonderful thing that's going on there. Also, you have some other kind of types of digital platforms that have helped classical musicians so much in the last years, especially YouTube and other social media during the pandemic. Like obviously, we all couldn't go out, we all couldn't do the things that we wanted to do, and then having this digital stage to kind of substitute, that was so cool. And there was a lot of breakthrough with a couple people during that time. I know of a YouTube creator that went well into earning over 100,000 per year just because the pandemic kind of kicked off his career. I know of other creators that have leveraged YouTube to get to an international career, which is absolutely amazing. If you think about it, it's just doing nothing more than sitting at home, recording yourself, posting that on the internet, and the magic happens, right? Unbelievable. And also a good thing that you can kind of do and stay connected is to be reaching out to each other through an email newsletter. Like that is also something that I do. If you want to, let's say, stay updated on all the new developments that are going on and what is happening, like there is an Artful Maestro newsletter, like whenever a new interesting podcast episode comes out so you don't miss it, or if there's like a special workshop onto a topic that is really of interest to you, so that you know that you can go and participate. That is what's inside the newsletter. Like that's the important stuff that I'm sharing with others. And that's also a very good method for you if you have important stuff going on in your life to share it with other people. By the way, if you want to sign up for the newsletter or for the inner circle or for anything else, all the links are down in the description below. Now, we've talked about this. Let's talk about the risks of digital overreach. Like what's going to happen that are the downsides and that are also already happening. And they are kind of creating this discrepancy in between everyone. So the first one is just being superficial. Being superficial is kind of the nature of modern society. That's what many people say. Audiences, they may consume classical music, but it could be just more like a background type of noise instead of actively listening to it, like they would in a concert. So maybe that also poses like different requirements onto music to be maybe less expressive or distracting and just more, like a beautiful sound in the background. And you can tell that also with the compositions and the artists that have been becoming popular in the last years, that this is definitely the trend happening. So you might pose the question, where's the art going with this, right? There could be also just an overemphasis on trends. Like if something is happening right now, or like this movie came out, right, and there's this soundtrack, and then everybody starts playing the soundtrack. Or I know of creators that are just playing music from video games. There's like fantasy and they're doing transcriptions and so on, and that's like their thing. Just doing video game stuff. Crazy, right? Well, it's not actually crazy. I mean, when that's your thing, I love that. And like from the ones that I know, they really stay true to it. It's not like others, like the unsuccessful creators that I know, they're just jumping from trend to trend to trend to trend, and they never get any traction because it's just like too all over the place. usually, especially as an artist, here's the tip. You want to stay consistent and you want to stay in your tracks, right? So usually when something happens that it just becomes trendy what you do, then you kind of go and take off, but you need to build that trust with your audience. So again, overemphasizing trends, not really helpful in many ways. Then there's also like the possibility of loss of craftsmanship. Like the technology allowing for everybody to just get out there and create their stuff. Not necessarily everything is going to be of the same quality, and not necessarily the algorithm deciding what is going to go viral and what not has the ability to choose, like, this is quality art, this is maybe not. It's just being shared what's popular with people. So that's a very different side of looking at things, that is kind of putting all the art aspect in the background, where it's about mastery, and it's going forward and putting entertainment into the first place, which is just kind of creating popularity instead of maybe actual truly meaningful stuff. Also, what's really, really, really difficult is the dependency on platforms. My main platform, for example, was Instagram. And we all know, like, platforms come and go, and sometimes they have skilled CEOs and they get to establish themselves and stick around for a longer period, but sometimes they just kind of disappear. And I know that I stuck around with Instagram. It was my strongest platform, and I got pissed several times because they would just change the rules. I went from, I don't know, that was especially hard because I had hundreds of thousands of views on every video that I posted, which was pretty cool. And then during 1 week, everything crashed down for so many creators. It all crashed down just because they changed the algorithm. And they said, oh, we are not going to do that anymore. We are now going to focus on to other things. But they didn't necessarily say which other things, so we had no chance of figuring it out. And that's just like like gambling. You go to the casino and just try your best, right? You might hit the jackpot, you might not. And it's not something that I necessarily feel is fair towards the creators. And it's also not something that is being fair to the audience either, because you just kind of mix it all up all the time, and there's no expectancy of what you can have of using the app. Honestly, I don't use social media at all at this point, like only for networking, only for posting, only for like the most necessary things that I need to do. All the rest is just, not my thing. Really not my thing. Please don't tell it to other people. They're not going to think it's fun. But honestly, if you see how your life can develop and if you see what you can do with it, I highly suggest not to become dependent on platforms. I mean, they can be like a tool that can help you get to where you want to go. But the core of everything, like your skills as a musician, your skills as an artist, your skills in networking, your actual network that is kind of extending outside of these platforms. That is going to be the core still of who you are and what you do. And you really need to focus on that. Like, that's the most important thing for you. So here's the question. How can we embrace technology without sacrificing the integrity of our art? How can we do that? And that is a question that has been leading me for the last couple of years. The ones that have been following me on social media, they know that I have very very specific style. So I don't love the simply entertainment, go do whatever people think it's fun, so it's reshareable. I'm also not trying to do like super niched down content, which is only for 3 experts all around the world. I'm trying to find like a common language with many people and to get them interested in the area that I am interested in, that I have some expertise in, that I know that it is really valuable for me to share it with others because they will have a benefit from knowing about it. That is my style. And again, it's been always the leading question: how can I use technology without sacrificing the actual thing of the art? How can I not abuse the art form to just become super famous or to, do anything that it might even be harmful to the art itself or harmful to other people? How can I actually create value and more value to spread across so everybody can benefit from that? And that might be something that you want to take with you as well. And just ask yourself, how can I use this technology and keep the art form? I'm sure there's many different options, and I'm also curious to talk to you about it. Like when you go to the Artful Maestro community, which is called the Inner Circle, we get to chat there about these things as well. So just go on there, hop onto one of the live meetings that we have once a month, and we'll discuss these. Okay? Looking forward to talking to you there. Now, to summarize today's episode, before I say goodbye, we have a huge tension between tradition and technology. And especially in the classical music field, where so much is happening live and so much of these emotions, expressions, everything that's going on, like all these small details, we yet cannot capture them and give them back to people with technology in the same way. It's just not possible. Maybe it will someday in the future, but right now, oh boy, the real thing is really, really good. And then we have digital tools, which are tools. So they can actually enhance our classical careers. The question always to ask is like, what's the classical career? What's at the core of it? And it's music. And music is happening at the present moment. So however you can enhance this present moment, however, if you can make it more intense, that's great. If you can get more people to be present with you, that's great. So you can use these tools to invite people, to get them excited to share a moment of presence with you. Always keep in mind there are risks of over-reliance on these tools and the superficiality. Not taking care of the depth of the art. So here's a hopeful perspective. Going digital is not the enemy of tradition. It's just a tool. How we use determines whether it's going to enhance our experience and our career, or whether it's going to completely deteriorate everything and we lose it all. For more discussions like this, do post a comment. Do let me know what you think about this. Do go and join the Artful Maestro community where we can continue this conversation. I really, really love to hear all of your perspectives. And this is ultimately what I'm doing it. It is for you. It is that you get to have your questions answered, your needs met. Whatever your goal might be, I want to support you to go there, because I dream of a world where when we all support each other, we grow much, much, much more. I've learned so many things from people who have just been unbelievably nice to me and given me all the tools they had and everything they got because they just wanted to see me succeed. And I'm eternally grateful. Thank you so much. This really helped immensely. And now I want to give that and pass it on to you. Like all this knowledge that we had, always new developments, everything that's going on, it is so exciting and it can be so overwhelming that if I'm already spending all this money on it, all this time, all these connections that I have, why don't just profit a little bit of it and take the shortcut if you can do that? So thank you for exploring this thought-provoking topic around classical music and technology. I know it's not finished at all. Like, there will be a couple of really, really, really deep discussions. I feel in the months and years to come, we will have to face some huge challenges and also large decisions of how this is going to go further. Maybe they will not be as clear-cut to everyone. Maybe they will not be as decisive looking from outside. But if you don't have clarity on what you're doing, you'll end up doing nothing. Nothing at all. I have people who I know from my studies that were brilliant musicians. And after their studies, they kind of started slacking off. They kind of lacked motivation. They kind of got frustrated. Guess where they are now? Nowhere. They're kind of erased from existence, working in a small post somewhere, teaching children while not having fun at it. Like, it's bad. Let's not go there. Let's try to stay present as music wants to stay present with us and to get as much clarity as we can so we can shape our future actively, proactively, and in the way that we want it to go. Hey, thanks so much for hanging around. Do let me know about this episode. All the relevant links are in the description. Do like, subscribe, share with friends, everything that's necessary to help everybody else. And I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.